Global tension. How did Syria lose its entire army in just 72 hours? And what role did Russia, Ukraine and their interests play in this tragedy? What seemed like a golden opportunity for Kyiv to seize Syrian aircraft and weaponry ended in a military disaster that no one expected. Massive bombings, secret agreements and a total demilitarization changed the fate of the region. Stay tuned, because this story reveals the downfall of an army and a power play that rewrote the rules. When the fall of Bashar al-Assad's regime became a reality, the future of Syria darkened in a matter of hours. What was once one of the most militarily equipped nations in the Middle East became a fragmented battlefield, a zone of chaos and disorder where the interests of various powers intertwined. Ukraine, desperately looking at its depleted military resources, set its sights on Syria's vast arsenals as the perfect solution to stay afloat in its fight against Russia. In particular, the MiG-29s and other Syrian aircraft became a coveted target. The Ukrainian strategy was clear: to ensure that their mercenaries on the ground could capture and profit from Syrian arsenals and aircraft. Artillery pieces, Soviet ammunition, and the possible acquisition of fighter jets offered Ukraine a crucial respite in the midst of a war that seemed to be draining all its resources. But what Ukraine hadn't anticipated was the relentless reaction from Israel and Russia. Shortly after the fall of Assad, Israeli forces began to act swiftly, launching massive bombing raids that devastated Syria's military bases and arsenals. In just 72 hours, more than 350 Israeli airstrikes destroyed any chance of Ukraine getting its hands on Syrian artillery and aircraft. This was not an isolated action, as the United States also entered the scene, carrying out more than 100 additional bombing missions against Syrian facilities. The result was clear: Syria had been demilitarized in record time, and Ukraine's hopes of acquiring those planes and weapons vanished in the face of the combined air power of Israel, the United States, and Russia. But what appears to be a concerted move by the West and Russia is not so simple. Russia, an ally of Assad, had a responsibility to protect Syria, but it did not act in the way Kiev expected. Instead of directly confronting the Israeli or American bombing raids, Russia took a different stance. Its interest was mainly focused on protecting its own strategic bases in Latakia and Tartus, two crucial points in the Mediterranean. In this process, it even agreed with the new Syrian regime not to intervene in attacks against Syrian arsenals, despite the apparent cooperation between Western and Russian powers to ensure that the arsenals did not fall into Ukrainian hands. Something much bigger was at stake. Syria was not only losing its military capabilities, but it was caught between the interests of major powers, each seeking to maximize its own objectives. For Russia, control over its bases in the Mediterranean was paramount. Although the country benefited from the disappearance of threats from terrorists and rebels, the truth is that Russia's strategic objectives were achieved at the cost of Syria's complete demilitarization. For Ukraine, the disappointment was profound. The idea that Syrian arsenals, mostly of Soviet origin, could revitalize its capabilities was destroyed, along with the planes and weapons it so desperately needed. Kyiv had planned a masterstroke with the purchase of these arsenals, especially the MiG-29s, which could have breathed new life into its air fleet. But that dream was cut short by a coordinated military action, involving global and regional powers to prevent that power from falling into Ukrainian hands. In the end, what remained of Syria was a country stripped of its military strength, with its army turned into shadows of what it once was. The MiG-29s, which Ukraine had coveted, were destroyed, and any hope of recovering those resources vanished among the rubble of the bombings. However, Russia did not emerge completely victorious. Although its bases in the Mediterranean remained secure, the cost was high. Syria, its ally, was now in ruins, and the balance of power in the region had changed forever. The demilitarization of Syria not only affected the country and its people, but also altered the plans of several nations. Ukraine, which had pinned all its hopes on these arsenals, now finds itself more isolated than ever. Russia, on the other hand, can breathe easy knowing that its interests in the Mediterranean are safe. but the aftermath of Assad's fall may have reshaped power in the region in ways it did not anticipate. The fate of Syrian arsenals is now uncertain. Although they are no longer a threat to the interests of Russia, the West, or even the rebels, the region faces a reconstruction that will likely take decades. The fall of Assad marked not only the end of a regime, but also the end of an era of military power in Syria. The international powers that once competed for influence in the country now face a power vacuum, and the pieces of the geopolitical puzzle continue to move in unpredictable ways. Meanwhile, Syria remains a devastated country where its armed forces have been dismantled, and the hope of restoring its military capability vanished along with the last vestiges of its former glory. Now, the future of Syria and its people depends on a reconstruction that is not only economic but also political, amidst an international chessboard full of broken alliances and broken promises. In the past 2 years, Ukraine has witnessed military betrayals that have shaken its strategic foundations. With the escalation of the conflict in the east of the country, several high-ranking officers who collaborated with foreign forces and separatist groups have been unmasked. These betrayals have not only weakened Ukraine's defensive capabilities, but have also sown distrust and paranoia within its own ranks. One of the most shocking cases involved a general in the Ukrainian army who, in an unexpected turn of events, was revealed to be a double agent in the service of Russia. His access to confidential information and his influence on tactical decisions led to significant defeats for Ukrainian forces. The revelation of his double game triggered an internal purge, dealing an even greater blow to the army's morale. In addition, lower-ranking officers were discovered leaking crucial information to pro-Russian separatist groups. These leaks included details on troop movements, defensive strategies, and the location of arsenals, compromising national security and facilitating coordinated attacks against Ukrainian forces. Betrayal has not been limited to the military sphere. There have also been cases of government officials who, through bribery or pressure, have handed over sensitive information to foreign powers. This internal espionage has weakened Ukraine's diplomatic positions, making it difficult to obtain the international support needed to confront aggression. The Ukrainian government's response has been forceful. Stricter security measures have been implemented and thorough investigations have been carried out to identify and neutralize the remaining traitors. However, the damage was already done, and trust within the army and the government remains fragile. In this context of distrust and betrayal, Ukraine's struggle to maintain its sovereignty becomes even more complex. As the country tries to rebuild its military strength and restore trust in its institutions, the specter of betrayal lingers, like a constant shadow threatening its stability and its future. Ukraine's recent history reminds us that in times of conflict, loyalty becomes as valuable a resource as any weapon. The military betrayals of the past 2 years have left an indelible mark on the country, a mark that can only be erased with time, effort, and constant vigilance against those who seek to undermine its integrity from within.